All right, everybody. Welcome to the Going Ballistic podcast, episode number 27. I'm Ryan Cleckner, and I'm with,
Jason Cleckner.
hey man, glad to have you back. This has been 3 weeks in a row. I mean, this is a new record for us, right?
That is a new record for us.
So I'm going to get into the record Canadian sniper shot because you're going to kill me if I don't. But first, you mentioned you went out shooting your rifle some more. Can you tell us about that a little bit? I'm eager to hear how it went for you.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, yesterday, being Labor Day, I had the day off. Thought, you know what? It's a little hot still, but I'm going to go out and shoot for a little while. Took a buddy of mine with me. So went for a hike to where I like to shoot and decided to set up a couple big pieces of cardboard, painted a diamond in it,
Mhm.
like you discuss in your book and what we've talked about. And I did a shot at 200, 500, and 800 yards. Now, I entered in as much info as I could enter on the Vortex LRBC to get me started.
I don't remember if we talked
my
about the LRBC. Have we? Do people know what that is?
talked about it a little bit a couple episodes ago. So Vortex has a website, and it's awesome. I mean, you basically click on the map where you're going to shoot. It'll bring up the data for that time of, your altitude, the temperature, moisture in the air. It kind of does the work for you.
It's awesome. Yeah.
And then once you enter your information, you validate it, and it'll give you a printout. With that, I went out and at 200 yards, I mean, I'm dead money, man. It's beautiful. So of course, at 500 yards, I really can't see where I'm shooting. So I thought I had a big enough piece of cardboard. So fired 3 shots at 500, and then I switched to the AR, fired 3 more shots. Then went to the 800 yard mark and clicked it to where I needed to click on that. Fired 4 shots, and then fired 4 shots with the AR, and then went hiking again. Now I got to tell you, 800 yards is like forever when you are hiking over rolling hills. It seems like it's
you were getting
a
old.
mile and a half. It just seemed like it just looked really far. So it was awesome. I got out to my 800 yard target, not a bullet hole in it. So I'm discouraged. I'm like, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Get to the 500 yard mark, and beautiful group. I'm probably 3.5, no more than 4 inches is my grouping for the 3 shots with the 308. And I was actually
At 500 yards?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
And I was 3 inches with the AR. So your diamond worked out really well. I just lined up, my vertical and horizontal lines with the diamond.
All right, talk about the diamond real quick. For those folks that found me but haven't purchased or read my book, you referenced it. Explain it to us if you don't mind.
Yeah, so it was actually brilliant because I always use crosshairs, but I've never shot this far before. We played around with rocks and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
The diamond worked out beautifully because I'm not covering up my crosshair that I have drawn on the cardboard. So it was really nice just to line up my lines at the points of the diamond.
So I think I'm having some audio troubles. Can you say it was brilliant again?
It was brilliant.
I'm just kidding. It's not my idea originally. I caught it from other people. Anyway, so yeah. So folks, what he's describing is, one is you got to stop staring at the target if you want to be successful with long range shooting, and you need to be focusing on the reticle instead. Well, the problem is, especially if you don't have your parallax perfect, you're not used to looking through a scope, you're going to play that game where your eye is focusing back and forth from the reticle to the target and making sure it's still lined up, and is it here and is it there? You're thinking about way too many things. Well, if you set yourself up with a target that makes it easy to not have to focus on the target, that's a win, right? So I like the diamonds because it's really easy for my eye to see that diamond in the background not lined up perfectly center, because the top, bottom, left, and right points are going to be lining up right on your reticles. And you end up, if you make your diamond thick enough. So if you guys go to my website, you go to ryancleckner.com, you can go check out my books. And on the long range shooting handbook page, there's a link there that has the extra details from the book. There's also a link for getting some free targets. I gave away the targets I use in my courses for free because I like them, and I figured you guys might too. And in there, I made the diamonds the exact correct thickness for certain magnification scopes to work. And the targets are labeled by magnification power for you to shoot. And what it does is it leaves a little white triangle on all four corners of the reticle. You know what I'm talking about, Jason?
Yep.
In the shape of the diamond. So it's easy to stare at the dead center of the reticle and watch those little triangles. So I like it. I've never tried painting it on a target for a distance, but I'm glad you tried it, and I'm glad it worked.
I just took some spray paint, painted it on there. So when I got to the 500-yard target, I realized how high it was shooting. Got back to the truck, took the tape measure.
How high was it?
8.5 inches above center. And just a hair to the right, which was probably just a little breeze of wind that I had coming.
Mm-hmm.
Windy, but it was just barely off to the right. So I said, okay, did the math. My 800-yard target that I brought back and realized, holy crap, with the numbers they're giving me and where it should be hitting, I'm shooting about 30 plus inches over the top of the dead center, which is shooting over the target.
Yeah.
Hit it at all.
So why was the data wrong?
So I don't know exactly. So I entered the velocity of the bullet that came in the box that I bought, and I showed you earlier. I bought a box of 168 grain atomic ammunition with boat-tailed hollow points, and it says that the bullet should be going 2,600, and that's the data it printed for me. But once I changed my LRBC from 12 minute of angle at 500 to basically 10.5, right? Because that's the closest math to the 8.5 inches. It recalculated everything out for me, and it gave me, and I printed it, it adjusted my speed to 2781.
Okay. So it kind of backed into the velocity based on what was happening.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go back out again, 800-yard target, shoot at it, take that math, enter it into the RBC, and I should be pretty set because
you'll dial it in more and more. Yeah.
So that was the adventure for yesterday.
Awesome, man.
The rattlesnake almost stepped on and took the rhino out, but yeah, other than that, it was exciting.
So the most important variable you need to know, of course, I'm going to regret saying this as soon as I said it, is velocity. I mean, you need to know if you've got a gun and if it's loaded. I get that. You need to know it's zeroed. But I mean, if you don't know the BC of your bullet, who cares? You know, even if you don't know the grain to a certain point, if you know the velocity, at least that's the starting point, because that's really what everything else is based off of. All the other details and data that you have is only the relative effect on your velocity. So air pressure, humidity, temperature, all that is all going to change your velocity. If you don't know where you're starting from, it's not going to help you know what the change is going to be. So it's backing into your velocity. That's awesome. Every gun, every cartridge, even every scope is different, no matter how identical it's supposed to be. So using the box, of course, that's a good start because, you know, better than not. But always get it for yourself. I've got some people chiming in on the chat here on YouTube Live. So those of you that don't know this, I'm broadcasting the podcast also on YouTube. So this is really mainly a podcast that you can listen to through your normal podcast app, through iTunes or Google Play or anything like that. But I decided to put it on YouTube also for those of you that like to follow along and like to see Jason and I talking to each other or chat with us live. And so a couple people have chimed in. Tyler chimed in. Hey, Tyler, I'm glad you made it on. He's asking, what's my opinion on cold bore tracking and how often do I re-zero my rifles? Cold bore tracking, I think, is a myth. I'm overstating that like I overstate everything else, but I think it's a myth. I think it's really more of a cold shooter and not a cold bore. But I think it's one of those things that sounds cool and it sounds like it could be believable. So I think people in the shooting industry just repeat it all the time. I mean, in the military, guys would take and fire a couple rounds into the ground before they'd go out of the gate on a mission so their barrel was fouled. Yeah, there's a difference between a cold barrel and a fouled barrel in what's in the bore and if it's warm and the temperature of the powder and all that kind of stuff. But when you then go drive somewhere else for 2 hours, it's back to cold again. Or if 0 rounds to 1 round is dirty, what's the difference between 1 round to 100 rounds? That's must be more dirty. So there must be a bigger change there, but everyone seems to forget about that. What I think is happening is people get to the range and they lay down to shoot a group and it sucks or it's off. And they get resettled, they get a little mad at themselves, they shoot a second group or a third group or a fifth group, and the fifth group is better than the first group. So they want to have something to blame it on. And so I think they call it the cold bore. That's why I call it cold shooter, is you should actually warm up. So I give you a challenge. I used to do this for years with sniper students. When I was teaching as a sniper instructor full time, we would have students, after I was confident in their abilities to shoot a group and call their shots. We had a target, by the way, Jason, that was diamonds, had a row of 5 diamonds on top and a row of 5 diamonds just beneath it. And we would have them on the first day of this exercise, like day 10 of the course. We'd have them shoot a 3 or 5 round group at the first diamond up top. I'm sorry, I take that back. We'd have them shoot 1 round at the top diamond, and then we'd have them finish the group on the bottom diamond. Then we'd go down range, and we wouldn't analyze it. We wouldn't even talk about it. I would just make them take it off, fold it up, and put it back in their bags. And then every morning, when we went out to the range, I would have them put a clean patch on the barrel, make sure the barrel is perfectly clean. We'd walk out to the 0 range, same thing. I'd have 1 round at top and a group at the bottom. And we did that for 5 days so that we could compare where those bullet holes at the top would have lined up if they were shot within the group at the bottom. Now, the difference, though, is we had them all dry practice or dry fire first. So I made them all lay on the line and dry fire as many times as they needed to until they had 5 perfect presses. So once they called 5 perfect shots, then they can load and shoot their groups. And out of years of sniper students, maybe 1 or 2 still swore they had a cold bore issue. And maybe it was. I mean, who am I to say if that gun shoots at the cold bore issue? But everyone else, 99% of the people, every single cold bore shot could have been superimposed exactly in the group below it. And there was no change at all. So that's what I think about cold bore. Now, when I zero, every time I go to the range, I pull the gun out. I'm not going to, unless there's a life or death situation, which there isn't for me anymore, or I hope not anymore, I'm shooting at 100 yards. I'm confirming my 0. I'm making sure nothing moved. I'm making sure that the gun's all still set up. That's the only time I like shooting groups, honestly, is just to confirm it's zeroed. So Ben said, not a lot of people have chronos, so going off the box and environmentals is also you have. Yeah, you're right. So exactly. Go off the box, like I mentioned to Jason, start there. Go off of what that load should be on the internet. But the environmentals aren't going to tell you the velocity. The environmentals are only going to tell you the change in velocity. So there's no such thing as a certain velocity for 308 at a certain temperature. That's not true. There's a certain velocity for your 308 at a certain temperature, and then there's a change, let's say 20 more degrees Fahrenheit. There's then a change in your velocity, but there's never an actual value that's associated with that. You could like look up in a book and get the actual value. All you can see is the environmentals. All they do is change your current velocity. You still never know what it is. I hope that helps. Skillner the villain. Can you measure your drop at distance and calculate backwards to get your bullet velocity? Yes, it's exactly what Jason did. You can use ballistic software. You can back into that data and figure it out. Wow, comments are really coming in. I'll try and hurry them up and we'll get back on topic here. C squared. I'm glad you guys are chiming in. This is great. Wait, isn't velocity affected by temp and a little RH, relative humidity? Yep, a little bit, and lots of air density too. Does density altitude really matter to muzzle velocity? Yes. It affects your drop, yes, but how much does pressure affect muzzle velocity? It doesn't affect muzzle velocity. It affects how fast your bullet slows down on its way to the target. So it's still going to leave the barrel at the same speed, but it's going to slow down faster than if you were shooting in a vacuum. So the thicker the air, the more it slows down. So a lower density altitude, so denser air, will actually make your bullets impact lower on the target because it'll take longer to get there and it'll affect the wind more and things like that. So yeah, it's all connected. Jared Johnson recommended the Viper. Awesome. I think it's a great choice. I'm surprised Jared recommended it. I'm glad to hear that. I think it's a great deal, and Jason chimed in there. It's what he's got. So yeah. All right, guys. So I'm glad you got the comments coming in. All right, back on track. What were we talking about, Jason? Your experience with it, you're backing into your velocity, you're getting more accurate data. That's really cool.
So it'll be back out as soon as I can. And we'll set up another at 800 yards and get this thing dialed in a little bit better.
Okay.
And
Now,
just keep plugging
recommendation,
away.
I know you don't want to do it because you're hiking, but I would recommend to anyone else, don't go 2, 5, and 8. Go 2 and 3. Then go 3 and 4. And you will notice your incremental changes as you go out, and you can adjust so that you're never shooting at 800 and not seeing where it hits at all.
Yeah, and on the LRBC, they're actually recommending that you do like a 400 and a 700.
Yeah, that's for truing, though. That's what they call backing into the data and confirming it. That's for truing your data. What I'm saying, though, is your first time getting dope on a gun, don't jump like that if you can help it.
Oh, no, and I haven't. I've already had it out before and shot at my 1, 2, 300.
Okay. And then
now I'm just,
if you have a chance, do 4, then 5, then try 6, and it'll just save you time. It seems like it'll take you more time because you're going to be walking out and checking it, but it's better than slinging rounds, into no man's land at 800 or beyond. So that's awesome. And tell me about that 162 grain ammo that you introduced us all to last podcast.
It was 168 grains.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, the 8 was scratched and it looked like it too. So no, I was dead wrong on that.
No worries. I was interested to see what it was. I've never heard of it. Yeah, it's okay. Show us a Cleckner bolt gun. You guys have seen it on previous podcasts. I actually have them both off right now. They're both getting pretty photos taken of them. So sorry, Ryan. Maybe you can go back and on my Facebook page, you can see some of the live videos I went through and talked about it and showed people. I even think I dropped the scope on the ground because I had the scope finger tightened on. And I said, "Oh, and here's this rifle." And I picked it up and like this Vortex Razor Gen 2 thud on the ground. But that's why I buy nice scopes, because I'm not going to abuse them, but I don't have to worry about it being hurt. So, and if it does, it's Vortex. They'll give me a new one.
That's right.
And they'll give you a new one too.
Will.
So really, really, really good folks. I don't have any sponsors for the podcast, but maybe I should. I guess the only sponsors I have are my own projects, and you guys have knocked it out of the park with Rocket FFL. It has really taken off. I really, really appreciate it. I especially like the feedback. You guys are taking the course and telling what you like or don't like about it. I was on the We Like Shooting podcast. I've been on some of these other podcasts helping promote it. I guess that's what you're supposed to do. So people have been checking it out. It's been really great. And I'm getting the negative comments the most that are still shocking me are the people saying I'm scamming everybody, which, guys, I have more to lose in this industry than trying to scam you on a $50 online course. Trust me, if I was in this for the money, I would rather you set up your FFL the wrong way and then call me as a firearms attorney to help you get out of trouble, because that $50 isn't going to cover the first phone call. I'd be able to get more money out of you that way. So one, I'm not scamming you, but I hear groups of guys going, "Oh, this is a scam. It's impossible to get your FFL at home." And then I have to go through and remind these people, no, actually more than half of the current FFLs are out of people's homes. That's how common it is. It's the most popular type of FFL people have. Or no, look at all these people throughout the years they've gotten their FFLs at home, or look at mine, or look at all this kind of stuff. And they just keep saying it's impossible. It's impossible. Well, then the other half of the people say, why would you take a course? All you got to do is just, look up how to get an FFL. And I think I should introduce these people to each other. Like, hey, half the people that are upset that say it's too easy, that you don't need a course, go talk to the people that say it's so hard it's impossible. Maybe you guys will balance each other out. So yes, you can get an FFL on your own. I mean, I've had my name on 28 FFLs at once, and I did it all before Rocket FFL existed. So clearly it's possible. It's just Rocket FFL is not about how to get the FFL as much as it is all the other information you need. It is just the basic course is 7 chapters. Only chapter 4 talks about how to apply for the license. That's it. All the other chapters are the background information you need and some of the rules and regs you need to know and how to keep certain records. It's all the other information you need. And so when I have folks, you might be listening right now that think it's still too easy, I have a quiz for you real quick. Sorry to bore everybody else. But if you're an FFL, you got to keep this thing called an A&D log, an acquisition and disposition record. And you got to put the manufacturer and the model and the caliber and all the information from the gun in this log. So I like to give people this test. I say, all right, I'm going to give you a sample information and you tell me what's wrong about it. Under make, I put Glock. Under model, I put G19. Under caliber, I put 9mm Luger. What's wrong? The answer is all 3. There's no such thing as Glock for an approved ATF record. It's either Glock/Glock Inc. or just Glock ink. And there's a really complicated reason why, and it's in the course, and I explain it to you. The model can't be G19. That's what Glock puts on their boxes. I wish they'd stop. The actual model on the gun is just 19. So that would be a violation. And the caliber on the gun is 9x19. It's not 9mm Luger. So all three of those would be a violation during an inspection. So there's a lot of little nuances. It's not that tough once you learn how to do it. Up to you guys. If you're interested, please check it out. I appreciate the help. I'm making progress on the advanced book. I have a piece of software that helps me log how many words a day I need, Jason, and I'm on track. So seriously, it tells me how many words I got to type a day, and I'm meeting my goals to get it out on time. I'm excited about that. But I have so many side projects going. Holy smokes. I mean, we just announced today I'm starting another podcast on the Firearms Radio Network. It's going onto their network. We're trying to keep it a secret on what it's going to be called and what it's going to be about, but it's not going to replace this one. Don't worry. It's going to be completely different topics, format, everything. I think it'll be still related to guns, but it'll be different. Trust me. So I'm doing that. I'm actually flying out next week to a seminar on pesticide applicators.
What?
They called me, wrote to me and said, hey, I've read your book, or I know about you for reading wind. We'd like to know how you can apply sniper wind reading techniques to pesticide application. I said, I don't know if you can. And I don't know how big your droplets are and how much they blow. And you're going to have a bunch of engineers and stuff there. I'm going to get just embarrassed on stage talking about, fluid dynamics and water droplet, atomization. And they're like, no. We really want the presentation at our big seminar to be how snipers read wind and maybe how it applies to this. Okay. So we went through all the details, and that'll be something doing next week. So all these fun projects are awesome, but I'm not forgetting about the book, folks. I'm not forgetting. I still appreciate your support. And one big bragging piece of news for the book is it is now the longest best-selling book in the category on Amazon, in its category. It's been 19 months. The previous book was 18 months. So now, as of this week, it has been the bestseller for the longest amount of time, which is really kind of cool. And it's because you guys have been so awesome to not have egos and bitch and moan about some of my techniques, and just taking with a grain of salt if you do or don't like them, and just being awesome, raising money for charity and supporting me. So I really appreciate it. Jason, do we have any more comments coming in?
We do. I was going to tell you, BC Outdoor has a excellent comment on how did you learn how to stop flinching?
I just kept scaring myself. How do you learn to stop flinching? I don't know if you do. I'll still catch myself doing it. So here's a rare moment. Take somebody that is a self-professed expert in the field, especially when it comes to shooting, and get them to admit that they still flinch. I do it. Jason, you do it?
Yep, sometimes.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, every once in a while, I catch myself. I'll end up with an empty chamber or something. I'll go off and click. I flinch. I don't do it a whole lot. I used to do it a lot more, but it still happens. Dry practice or dry fire, I think, is the best absolute way to do it, because if you're afraid of the gun, okay, you need to get over being afraid of the gun. I can't teach you how to do that in your own brain or besides just practicing. But the flinching of learning how to focus on the reticle and control the trigger while you're shooting, that all comes from dry practice. I'm not overstating this one. Especially while you're learning, you should be dry firing your rifle more than you're firing it live. If you go to the range and shot 20 or 50 rounds, you should be dry firing 100 times at home. And you should be focusing only on the reticle and making sure the gun goes click without that reticle moving. Because your active part in shooting a rifle is essentially done when the rifle goes click. I mean, there's a little bit of follow through. There's making sure you're in a good position. But everything you had to do was the build up to the point till the firing pin goes flying forward. Okay? When the gun actually goes off, when you're shooting live ammunition on the range, you don't get to see if the reticle held perfectly still. You get to hide some bad habits. Matter of fact, that's why you usually don't see flinching when someone's firing the gun. You only see flinching when it's empty. So why introduce a loud bang, a flash, and recoil that are going to hide any flaws in your fundamentals? Instead, practice it with an empty gun and train yourself to do it. Another way to do it, BC Outdoor, sorry, there's only one of you, is to shoot in unsupported positions. stop shooting off your bipod legs, stop shooting off a bag, stop shooting off a bench, get up on a knee, or even better, stand. Take a 22 rifle and get good standing shooting with iron sights. Your flinches, your bad support, your bad trigger control is all magnified the less support you have. It's really easy for me to mash a trigger when the gun is like locked in solid with bags and arrests and everything. You don't see the movement. But when I'm standing, you really see the movement. I mean it, 22s, guys. Don't do 223 just for training purposes. I'm going to do 223 because it's fun. But you want cheap training, get a 22 because you can still get match grade 22 ammo for cheap. And you can shoot at close distance, and you can get good with your fundamentals. Try it.
Yeah, and that would have been my recommendation is maybe the gun's too big for you for right now. I mean, I don't know what he's shooting, but just like, for instance, for me, as you well know, I hate the 300 Win Mag. The gun makes me flinch.
Yeah.
I just don't like it. So maybe try with something smaller. Like you said, a 22 would be a great idea.
Standing 22 iron sights. Love it. That's like the most fun shooting too. Anyway, you go do that. C Squared added he purposely loads dummy rounds in random magazines when he's shooting. That's a good way too, but you're right, C Squared. We wrote, you said it helps you diagnose the flinching. It may not help you solve it, but it definitely helps you diagnose when it's happening. Now, dry practice to help solve it. BC Outdoor said he's shooting a 30-06 Tika. Awesome. Take anything in North America with that rifle. That's a great choice. Good for you. Stephen Woods wants to know about the secret program I'm working on. I don't know if you're talking about the podcast or the next project where I'm promising to get you guys an FFL in over half the country online. Maybe I just said too much about that second project, but I'm going to be done with that one pretty soon. In 30 minutes, I'm going to get you qualified to carry concealed in over half the country, no matter where you live. And the only reason you'll have to leave your house is to go get some fingerprint cards. Other than that, everything is online, and all your paperwork will be able to come to you in the mail. So you could do all of this from the toilet and your iPhone if you wanted to. You can take all the training, you can do everything except for the fingerprint cards. So I'm excited about that one. Nice. So Jason, I said that we were going to cover the sniper shot first.
Yeah. Yes, and we get off track as usual. So let's talk about the Canadian sniper.
All right, tell me what you know about it.
All I know is that he made a record shot at a little over 2 miles. And that's about it.
Well, that's great. So the Canadians are, first off, awesome guys, great snipers. I've had a privilege to train a couple of them and had great experiences the whole time. One of them, I think I told you this before, it was the PPLCI was like the center tag on his uniform. Those are the initials. I'm like, PPLCI, what does that stand for? He's like, oh, it's my unit. You know, what unit is the PPLCI? He goes, oh, it's Princess Patricia's Light Canadian Infantry. I went, that's funny. What's PPLCI stand for? Thinking that was like his joke for it, and he's deadpan face. No, it's Princess Patricia's Light Canadian Infantry. Like, oh, dude, you guys are called Princess Patricia's? That's the name of your unit? He wasn't as excited about that as I was. He took it in stride, but I definitely thought it was a lot more funny than he did. He was a good dude, too. He was a really good shooter. So one of the things is the Canadians take sniping, if that's a verb, seriously. They get great training, they get great equipment. And the reason they have a lot of these records and they keep beating each other's records is they are employed that way. They take on the jobs in the combat zones to be like an Overwatch and have no problem taking some of those shots, where a lot of the American snipers aren't in those positions. And I think they're doing great with it. So they're just being an amazing force to be reckoned with in the long-range shooting community, which I think is super, super cool. Now, I actually got to get a nice Fox News exposure when that happened, because they called me and asked me my opinion on the shot, and I couldn't tell them much because I wasn't there. I could only tell them, what sounds possible and what's not. And I repeat, I am not calling it into question. I'm not accusing anyone of lying. But when someone uses the adjective incredible, that means it's not credible. This is truly incredible to me. It's just, I can't get my brain around how it worked. So I no doubt in my mind that the guy fired a shot. And I also believe that some terrorist 3,800 yards away got hit with a bullet. It might have been the same bullet. It also might have been the 20th shot. They're just goofing around using clouds for holding left and right to get out there. It could have been a firefight, or it could have been on purpose. I don't know. But just making up some numbers on a ballistic calculator. So I like the shooter app. Ballistic AE is the one I like to use. So at 3,800 yards, that bullet, and assuming their velocity and assuming the environment, so we're doing some rough estimation here.
Now, what's the caliber?
50 cal.
50 cal.
50 BMG. Which is why it's so incredible. It'd be easier to believe with a different caliber. Ironically, because the 50 cal has all this momentum and all this energy, and then it just runs out of gas. I mean, bad runs out of gas at like 1,800, 2,000 yards. It just, the curve just like goes away. So it would have taken 8.19, so 8.2 seconds to get there. That's another reason it's really hard to do, is if you're off by the wind by 1 mile per hour at any one of those distances in there, you could completely miss by feet at that distance. So even if you're a perfect wind caller, the second you fire the gun, in 8 seconds, the wind can do a lot of changing now that the bullet is flying through the air. Any one of those changes, it would have moved. His velocity, I was talking to Tony Schenkel, who knows way more about ballistics and reloading than I ever will. And he was talking about how he did all the math on the either the extreme spread or the statistical deviations on velocity that you get even with super precisely, perfectly hand-loaded rounds, like that the best reloaders, better than I can do, get. And then compared to what this military stuff they're using is, and the spread between it, I think he said something if it was off 5 feet per second, which is unheard of accurate. I'd be lucky to get within 30 feet a second with that cartridge for loading it. Okay, the consistency. But if one round was the 0 round and that was the perfect hit, and the next round was 5 feet a second faster, he would have missed by something like 10 feet. So it's just magnified so much, and it's like coming in at this big angle, coming down, it would have missed him completely. And you like to talk about the target as the effective zone, how big the target is relative to the distance, and what sort of deviations you have. So you have the inaccuracy of the rifle is one cone, and then you have the inaccuracy of the ammunition, which makes a bigger cone, then the scope, then the environment, then all these other things make this cone of deviation so big that you have such a small sliver of a window at which it can hit. Where if the terrorist is at 500 yards, and you're aiming center mass, and they're really at 600 yards, you're still going to hit them somewhere. Right? Or they're at 450, you're still going to hit them. So you have, if you could imagine a bird's eye view of the shooter and the target, the closer you are, or the better ballistics you have going on with your bullet, the longer that acceptable zone of a hit happening is. Does that make sense? You have like 100 and 150 meter swath easily where the target could actually be and still be hit with that bullet flying through the air. At that distance, it comes down to like 6 inches or 10 feet or something. It's something ridiculously small when they figured out the numbers of, wow. So the distance had to be perfect, and the guy had to not move in 8 seconds. So again, awesome shot. I'm sure it happened, but wow. Okay, so here's some of the other stats for you. The drop in inches. At that distance, the bullet would have dropped, and this is from its 100-yard zero, 9,151 inches. Okay? Which in minutes of angle is 229 minutes of angle. So if most scopes, when they're mounted on a rifle, even with a 20-minute base, won't get you past 50 minutes, let's just go the extreme scenario and say you could get 60 minutes of adjustment in your scope. He needed 230 minutes of angle to be able to hit this target. So at 230 minutes, the scope would have had to been jacked up like at a 45-degree angle on the rifle, which means he would have been essentially looking through the barrel to see the target because the barrel would have had to been so high. So that alone, I doubt he was out walking around with a scope mounted like that to only be used like at that distance. Now, he could have been, which is what I would have done, been using clouds or the corners of buildings or something. No, a little bit higher. Next window up. Boom. Maybe see some, oh, that was so close. Try a little bit higher. Boom. They could have been goofing around and they finally got a hit. Maybe he did it. This also might be why this guy is way better, way more knowledgeable than me, because I think it is a miraculous combination of everything. A 5 mile an hour wind, for example, so just a 5, which is not much, that's just a breeze, at that distance would blow the target 218 inches off target. 218 inches off. That's a 50 BMG bullet. That's a hard bullet to blow off target. 218 inches to the side with a 5 mile an hour wind. So if that wind gusted between 0 and 5 at any time in that flight, we're talking a couple 100-inch difference. So if it happened, holy cow. It is not how steady he had to hold the rifle. I mean, you don't want to get into how much of a fraction of a minute of angle that target actually was for him to be able to hit, right? Like essentially perfect. I should have figured out that math before the podcast, so I don't have to figure it out on air on the fraction of minutes of angle. But it would have had the energy to kill somebody. It would have had 902 foot-pounds of energy still, which is about a 38 special from the muzzle. So, I mean, it still would have killed someone. But it is truly incredible how high he would have had to aim and just how aligned the stars would have needed to be in the universe for that to happen. So good for him. I didn't do it and I wasn't there, but what do you think, Jason?
Oh, I right there with you. I mean, and I'm still new to this and find it amazing. You know, when I first started doing all this with you and getting in long range, I mean, the furthest I would even consider shooting would be 300 yards from just a hunting aspect. And I'd hear people talk about shooting 600 or 700 or 800 yards at an animal, and I'd be like, no way. So is it possible? Well, clearly it is. They recorded killing the guy. But man, I just, everything had to be right, I guess. It's just one of those things.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about it for a reason, right? It is incredible. And kudos to him. Like I said, I can't say he didn't do it. I wasn't there. And I have no reason to believe that he would lie about it. But the quote I gave Fox News said the sniper deserves all the credit because the shooter did a good job, but the spotter was, if they do anything like the American teams like they used to when I trained some of the guys, the spotter is one doing all the calculations. So either way, pretty cool. And it just makes you want to do this more, right? It makes you want to geek out more and learn more about these kind of things if you can. So I hope you do. So you're going to go out and try that, Jason? Is that the next target, 3,800 yards?
No. I tell you, the biggest challenge for me to overcome since we started doing this and getting me into it is accepting, I guess, a minute of angle for accuracy, which is hard enough to do. But for whatever reason, in my head, I have like this movie analogy of, well, in the movies, they can just dial it in and smack a guy in the rifle scope at 2,500 yards. I mean, why can't I do that? Well, you start to learn all these things and all these variables, and it's like, how in the world do you ever hit anything?
Right.
Honestly.
Guys, remember, a minute of angle is a pie plate at 1,000 yards. I would take a hit on a pie plate at 1,000 yards all day long. Right?
So,
wouldn't you, Jason?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely would, because as I learn how many things can go wrong, it's amazing to even get it there.
Right.
For me, where I am right now.
Right. So I'm actually doing that part in the book right now when I mentioned the cones of dispersion. I'm trying to figure out a way to explain it simply, where you have these stacking of errors, and sometimes the errors can work in your favor. You know, so if the rifle can shoot within a certain circle of dispersion of the bullets, and you assume it's going to hit, miss, or not miss, but it's going to impact to the far right of its abilities in that cone. And then the ammo, so that's where the barrel's sending the bullet. Well, then the ammo has its own cone of dispersion around where that would have been. So you can, if both of them go to the far right, you're doubling that. But if one goes to the right and one goes to its left, you're hitting dead center. So that's why you can have a great group and a bad group with the same shooter and the same experience. Sometimes it's just the stacking of the rounds, which is why the more rounds you shoot for a group, the better of a picture it really is, because that can happen. So yeah, you're right. Just all these things added on together. Yeah, it's a fun thing to try and learn and do. So anyway, I'm glad we did it. Now I had in my back pocket a topic to discuss about the ogive of a bullet, between tangent and secant ogive, and what a hybrid ogive is. And Sierra just came out with a new kind of blended tangent ogive where they're putting a straight angle on part of the bullet. So instead of a curve as it comes back, they're actually curving it back then to a spot where it's actual cone straight angle, and then it's continuing a curve again. and that's so they can the bullet can theoretically better center in the rifling. But that's a long conversation. So Jason, do you mind if we save that for next time?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, man. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Any projects you're going to be working on?
No, the only thing I'd like to add to anybody like me that's getting new into it is just don't be discouraged. Um, there's a lot to soak in. I still have a lot to learn, and just try to stick with the baby steps and move forward, because it's starting to come together for me. I still got a long ways to go, but just hang in there.
And spend less money on gear. Buy ammo, buy training, go get good. I, for years now, not until I built my own rifle, was the first time I showed up with like a sexy rifle. For years, I show up with a beat to hell Remington 700 with a Leupold Mark IV 3.5 to 10 power scope that's got 12 different layers of Krylon scratched off on it. I drop it in classes all the time to show people not to be afraid of it. I might as well drug it behind a truck. It's a tool, and I could have that gun run and work just as good as anybody else's. Yeah, on its best day, I could shoot a half minute. It wasn't a great group shooter, as a custom rifle is going to be. But when it came time to smacking targets at distance, it did just fine because I focused on how to run that gun instead of sitting there with a gypsy camp of all this expensive equipment, and I never taking the time to train or taking the time to practice. So, Jason, good advice. Stick with it and focus on the basics. And when you start getting wrapped around the axle of ballistic coefficient and ogives and all that kind of stuff I'm talking about, that's just something to talk about for you to learn, stop. Just stop and shoot. The second you start getting wrapped on the axle, it doesn't matter. You could sit out the range and rattle off to me the geometric curve that an ogive needs to make it be a tangent ogive. But if you can't shoot, it doesn't matter. So get out, shoot, have fun. That's the point. And then learn as you go. But anyway, as always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you want to thank Jason and me for the free knowledge, you want to give back a little bit, tell people about this podcast. I'd appreciate it. That's how we grow this. And we're not selling ad space. We're not doing this for advertising. We're doing this because we like doing it. And if you like it too, then we found a match. I appreciate you guys joining on YouTube Live. I appreciate you joining on Facebook with some of the comments. I'm going to be here next week. Jason, you going to be here next week?
I should be here next week.
All right, guys. Until then, take care.
Take care, everybody.